When I was a kid, the Merritt Parkway, just a road, but it was a lovely tree-lined, four-lane divided highway that cut through the rich and rural Fairfield County in Connecticut. And commercial traffic and trucks and motorcycles were prohibited because it was the rich and rural Fairfield County. And people had planted dogwood trees in the meridian and on the sides. And my grandmother, Grammy, my father's mother, in the spring would love to have us take a ride on the Merritt Parkway to see the blooms. Now, I don't have a good transition for the next part of the story. That was as good as a transition as you're going to get. Here's the next part of the story. In 1968, I went to Vietnam, and as I said before, it wasn't entirely my idea. And it was, I was not a gung-ho, militaristic sort of guy, and still am not. I didn't much like the Army, and the feeling was mutual. I had this issue, I've always had this issue with authority and being told what to do. And if you have issues with authority and being told what to do, the Army is not the best situation for you. But being in the Army and going to Vietnam was beneficial to me in many ways, and it provided me with a real education on human nature and gave me many wake-up calls. For example, when I first went to Vietnam, they don't assign you to a unit right away, and so you have these, they want you to get acclimated to the weather, which is quite hot and humid, unpleasant. And you go to training, and they issue you weapons and a lot of other equipment. And it's typical Army stuff. You go on the ranges, and you go into orientations, and running here, running there, and waiting. And I went to this one orientation, and this was a real wake-up call for me because I learned about the big lie. Now, the big lie has been with us for ages. It's a critical part of advertising and our politics of the day. And it's so common and ubiquitous that we sometimes don't even notice it. And for example, think of an Arctic landscape. Okay, got that? Think of the length of the growing season in the Arctic, and then think of the location and name of Greenland. Greenland, big lie. And we don't even notice it. So the big lies are out there in many shapes and forms. And this one day I came up against a big lie. It was a typical day during orientation week there in Vietnam, just like college freshmen. And we're it's the middle of the afternoon, and we've been running around all day, and it is blazing hot and sauna, humid, and they march us into this tent, and the tents have Vietnam air conditioning, the sides are rolled up, and there's all these folding chairs there, and about 100 of us, and we're hot and dirty and in a bad mood, and so we all sit down, and there's a colonel way at the front of the tent, and he's on this raised platform, much like this one, raised platform. And he welcomed us to Vietnam. Oh, great. And then he tells us we don't have to worry, no need to worry about going home safely, because you are safer here in Vietnam than you would be in your own home. Interesting point. Pray tell, continue, yeah? And he then says, yeah, you're safer here in Vietnam because back in the States, 50,000 people die every year in automobile accidents. And here in Vietnam, only 5,000 soldiers get killed a year. He said only. We were soldiers. And he said only. So, I may have mentioned that I have this problem with authority, and I also have a hair trigger BS detector, and a problem with impulse. And I actually, this is a colonel. I am an E1 private, a nobody. And I raised my hand and I said, sir. Sir. And he says, yes, soldier. I said, look, there's got to be 200 million people in the United States, 200 million residents. There's 500,000 of us in Vietnam. 5,000 dead among 500,000 is a much higher percentage than 50,000 among 200 million. And his eyes kind of, you know the look I got. His eyes squinted and that little vein up in the temple started throbbing. And he looked at me and he said, son. I said, yes, sir. Percentage schmentage. When you're dead, you're dead. Well, I couldn't argue with either of those 2 points. But the rest of the group, the other soldiers, guys like me, they were laughing. They were hysterical. And their laughter and the colonel's attitude really irritated me, got me angrier. And I actually said, I'll tell you what, sir. I am no coward. And I am willing to volunteer for hazardous duty on the Merritt Parkway, and I am willing to go right now. The colonel rudely denied my request. This could have been part of the W2F story slam. And, I expected that. That didn't surprise me. But what really surprised me was how angry my fellow soldiers got, the other GIs, guys my age and in the same circumstance. And my wake-up call was realizing that they really wanted to believe the big lie. That's the allure of the big lie. It's much more comforting and alluring than our messy, sometimes dangerous, and imperfect reality. So we all have to beware of the big lie because we are all vulnerable. Thank you.